Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of the state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
I'm coming to you on this program from the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where my guest is the Secretary of the Navy, John Dalton, a Louisianian. Mr. Secretary, thank you for having us today.
Thank you, Gus. I'm glad to be with you.
Now, sir, what is very interesting to me, your predecessor was one Sean O'Keefe
That's
from
right.
New Orleans.
That's right.
Secretary of the Navy.
Indeed he was. As a matter of fact, when we unveiled Sean's portrait out here in the passageway just outside this office, I told Sean that he had done such a great job as Secretary of the Navy that President Clinton said, just find me somebody from Louisiana to be Secretary of the Navy. No, I think it's the first time in history we've had two people from the same state in this job succeed one another. So pleased to do that.
Sir, we're talking right in the front of a Trident submarine. Would you tell the folks in Louisiana the reason that we're talking in the front of this submarine?
Well, on the 27th of July, we'll be christening that ship, and that's when the ship actually gets named officially, and it'll be named by Sean O'Keefe's mother. She's actually the sponsor of that ship. But this will be the last of the Trident-class submarine, the 18th Trident-class submarine that's built. It will be christened at Groton, Connecticut, New London, Connecticut, later this month, and its
name?
Name is the Louisiana. It'll be the USS Louisiana, and I think it's great for the state, and we're proud to have one of our main ships, a great man of war that'll serve the Navy for 30, 35 years bearing the name of the USS Louisiana, and I'm awfully proud of it.
I must ask you this because I think the people of Louisiana who will see this program would be particularly interested. You've gone to these lofty heights, Secretary of the Navy. Do you still have feelings and affinity for Louisiana?
Absolutely. I'm very proud of my roots in Louisiana. I was born in New Orleans and in the Baptist Hospital, lived on Elba Street, grew up, moved to Shreveport when I was about 3 years old, and went to Byrd High School in Shreveport. I went to LSU for a year. I'm very proud of that. And we get back to Louisiana on a regular basis, back every year at Christmas in Shreveport. And been back to Baton Rouge in the last year. We commissioned the USS Shamal, one of our postal craft, in Baton Rouge earlier this year. So I get back. I was also back at Mardi Gras last year. I get back to Louisiana whenever I can. I love the state. I'm proud to be from Louisiana, and it's a great state, and people of Louisiana should be proud of Louisiana because we've got an awful lot to be proud of.
Secretary Dalton was telling me that he and Ms. Dalton are entertaining guests this evening, and she's going to cook
shrimp Creole.
Shrimp Creole. So our fame and fortunes of Louisiana being spread by this splendid and high-placed missionary.
Pecan pie as well, so it'll be strictly a Louisiana cuisine.
Sir, your dad was a train master with Kansas City Southern.
He was, absolutely.
And you were the youngest of three kids,
yes,
born
sir.
in New Orleans.
That's right.
After World War II, your dad took the family to Shreveport. And you kind of wanted a football future and career.
Well, that's true. I had I fancied myself as a good quarterback and had visions of going to college on a football scholarship. I had a knee injury when I was in high school, which prevented that. And about that time, I was inspired to go to the Naval Academy by the Men of Annapolis program, which was on TV at that time. Plus, I had an uncle who was a war hero in World War II, and I was inspired by what he did for our country. And those things led me to seek an appointment to the Naval Academy, and my brother wrote Overton Brooks on my behalf, and that started the process.
You didn't initially get the appointment, though, did you?
That's right. I didn't, but that was a blessing in disguise because I ended up having a great year at LSU.
That's not bad.
It was great. I'm proud of having attended LSU and was there the year that Billy Cannon made his famous run, 89-yard punt return against Ole Miss on Halloween night in 1959. That was that goes down with the home run in the bottom of the ninth to win the national championship in baseball this year that LSU
was something.
So two great events.
Sir, at Annapolis, you were an honor student, highly honored by the Corps as a student. You marched in two parades concerning John F. Kennedy. that to me are perhaps one of the stranger episodes in your career. That first time you marched was in President Kennedy's inaugural parade.
That's right. It was a cold day. It snowed 4 or 5 inches the night before. Snow was still on the street. It was a day I'll never forget, to march down Pennsylvania Avenue and look up to the reviewing stand and see the President of the United States was something, of course, I will never forget. He spoke at graduation, my plebe year or freshman year at the Naval Academy, and he was the first naval officer to become President of the United States. And so the Navy and John F. Kennedy have, we're very proud of him. And so he's someone that who is certainly an inspiration as a leader, a young leader for our nation.
But then that next parade
was his funeral procession. I was a senior when he was assassinated, and I never will forget, my parents were on the way up to Washington for the Army-Navy game, and just about the time they arrived, the news of his assassination and what a terrible tragedy that was for our nation, they postponed the Army-Navy game for a week, and they stayed in Annapolis and stayed over for the game. But we formed an honor company to march in his funeral procession, and I was very honored to be asked to lead that honor company in President Kennedy's funeral procession, and something I'll never forget.
I must ask this question. It's esoteric, but I'm interested. When you were a plebe at Annapolis, had there been an explosion and a genie appeared and said, "John, you're going to be Secretary of the Navy," what might your response have been?
I would never have thought that possible. But I love the Navy, and I'm really privileged to serve in this capacity. I really am grateful to the Navy for my education, for my training, early training as a naval officer. I don't think there's any better way for a young man or woman to start their career, or maybe make their career, to serve their country in the Navy or Marine Corps. And I'm grateful to have had that experience personally.
So, sir, you graduate from Annapolis. Tell us then about your own naval career.
Well, my first assignment was a submarine in Pearl Harbor. I went out to be a junior officer on the USS Blueback and served there for about 1.5 years. And I was in the Navy's nuclear power program for about 1 year. And then I reported to a submarine in Charleston, South Carolina, the USS John C. Calhoun. If you're in Charleston, South Carolina, being aboard the John C. Calhoun is not bad. He is a former vice president from that state. But it was, I enjoyed my Navy career very much. Spent almost 6 years on active duty, and then about a little over 2 years in Navy Reserves. And
but much of it was on the nuclear submarine, was it?
Yes, sir. I was on the last conventional boat we built, a diesel electric submarine, the Blueback, and then a ship like this, a fleet ballistic missile submarine, the John C. Calhoun, and really learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to have had that experience. And as I say, it's a great opportunity for young men and women who are thinking about what they might do to take some time to serve your country and get a good education, have the Navy Department assist in getting your education, and then have the opportunity to serve the nation and the Navy or Marine Corps is a great opportunity. I wouldn't take anything for having had that opportunity myself.
How long do those submarines stay under? What was life like?
We used to spend 70 days, 10 weeks submerged on our patrols, and that's about what we do today. It's a fascinating life. You stay busy. It's a lot to do, a lot to get accomplished. Part of the time you're on watch, actually, as the officer of the deck or the engineering officer of the watch. Part of the time you're doing your administrative work. Part of the time you're eating and sleeping, obviously, and then you have movies and entertainment of that kind. But it's a great way to serve, and I enjoyed it.
So, sir, you stay in the Navy for 5 years, is that correct?
Almost 5.5, almost 6 years.
And then you leave.
That's right.
And what do you do then?
I went back to get a master's in business at the University of Pennsylvania. Got my MBA at Wharton, the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania.
And met your wife, Margaret, I think.
Well, actually, Margaret and I met in Shreveport.
Shreveport native also?
That's right. She's a native of Arkansas, but grew up in Shreveport, and we both went to Byrd High School. We're proud of Byrd High School as well. Byrd High School has produced Pete Aldrich, who was Secretary of the Air Force, J. Bennett Johnston, who's retiring from the Senate after a great career this year, and Tom Jarrell. And there are probably few high schools in the country that could have two service secretaries, a United States Senator, and a national correspondent of Tom Jarrell's reputation.
Sir, you went to work in Dallas with a New York investment banking firm. How'd you like that?
I enjoyed it very much. I was actually on Wall Street for about a year with Goldman Sachs, and then went to their Dallas office. Was in Dallas for about 5 years with Goldman Sachs, and it's a great firm. My responsibility geographically was Louisiana, and I was in Shreveport and Baton Rouge and Lake Charles, Lafayette, Monroe, New Orleans.
President Jimmy Carter played a very important role in your ever getting into this business of politics.
That's true. I met Jimmy Carter in Dallas at a Naval Academy alumni meeting. He was in Dallas to speak to a major convention, and one of his classmates was in our chapter and invited him to speak. And I was an officer in our chapter and sat next to him at lunch. Liked him. We had a lot in common, both from the South, both Naval Academy, nuclear submariners. Both competed unsuccessfully for a Rhodes Scholarship, incidentally, and
Clinton got it.
That's right.
Go ahead.
That's right. But that was my, I liked him and liked what he was saying. And thought after the problems we had with Watergate and Vietnam and the abuses of power, that a guy like Jimmy Carter was the kind of leadership that we needed. And I think he did a fine job, and I was privileged to serve in his administration.
So you worked for his election, did you not?
I did.
You got active in politics.
I did. I was very active in his campaign in '76, and after the election, he appointed me to serve as president of the Government National Mortgage Association.
And you've worked for other Democratic candidates, Senator Benson, Governor Richards, for Dick Gebhardt.
That's right.
They weren't all Texans whom you worked for.
That's right.
Folks.
That's right.
Sir, how'd you get involved with one Bill Clinton, the President of the United States?
I met President Clinton when he was a governor, and I was working for the President Carter's reelection, and went down to see Governor Clinton in his first term. Met him then in 1979, and have stayed in touch with him over the years. We both were. Helped to assist the Democratic Leadership Council when he was chairman of that organization, and have kept in touch with him some off and on over the years, but really got better acquainted with him when he decided to run for president, and I supported his campaign in 1992.
You must have known George Bush also from Texas.
That's right. Matter of fact, President Bush and I have been pen pals since I've been Secretary of the Navy. During my confirmation hearing, it was comical. Typically, when you're appointed to a job like this, the home state senators where you're living present you to the committee that you're going to appear before, and so Phil Graham and Kay Bailey Hutchison presented me to the Armed Services Committee, but David Pryor from Arkansas asked if he could present me to the committee as well, because my dad was from Arkansas, my wife was from Arkansas, and I was, at the time, working for an Arkansas-based firm. Similarly, Bennett Johnson said, look, you're really from Louisiana. I'm big from
They
New
were
Orleans.
fighting over you.
So after Senator Pryor introduced me and saying I was really from Arkansas, and Bennett Johnson said, no, he's really from Louisiana, then Phil Graham said I was a Texas hand, Kay Bailey Hutchison quipped that if I wasn't careful, I'd be considered the George Bush of the Democratic Party, claiming all these home states. And so I wrote the president, and we sent him a clipping where that had appeared in the press, and told him that I was proud to be compared to him, even though it was said in jest, and had a nice letter back from him. But we've written back and forth over the last 3 years, because his wife is the sponsor of the USS George Washington, one of our major aircraft carriers, and he and Barbara Bush have been aboard several times, and I've written them about that. And then recently I was helpful in getting an aircraft for his museum, presidential library, that'll be going up at Texas A&M University.
Sir, I must ask this. Someday, this particular assignment will come to an end, all things do. Have you ever considered, given your background, John Dalton being a candidate for public office?
Well, I've had people approach me with that idea, and something I've thought about. I do enjoy public service. I think it's important that we see ways that we can enhance our government and opportunities for for our American people. But whether I'll actually throw my hat in the ring personally and run for office, I'm not sure. But I think I'll always be involved because I think it's something I enjoy. They say that once you get politics in your blood, the only cure is embalming fluid. So, so I'm sure that I'll be involved in some way in the future.
Now, this position of Navy Secretary is filled with, oh my goodness, I've never seen so many admirals and generals in the Pentagon. So it's a position to which is attached great glory. But there have been some tough sides of it too, haven't there?
Yes, sir. There have indeed, and I knew that was on my plate when I took this job. Tailhook had already occurred, and yet the disciplinary actions and handling those, the flag offs, flag and general officers aspect had not been dealt with. I knew that was something I was going to deal with.
Was that tough?
It was. You know, anytime you're making decisions that affect people's careers, it's tough, and it's gut-wrenching to make hard calls. But my goal was to be fair and to be firm, and I think I was. I feel the decisions we've made were proper, but it's difficult when you're making a decision that's going to adversely affect someone who spent 35 years in their profession. And
did you take that home with you, those burdens?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You must have had some gut-wrenching scenes where you had to tell people your decision.
Yes, sir. It has been difficult, but I knew that was, I knew that was going to be part of the job when I got here, and as was the Naval Academy cheating scandal had occurred. I knew I was going to have to deal with that. I knew that the overall base realignment and closure process.
Question. At Annapolis, like the other military academies where all emphasis is on honor, who can forget that speech of General MacArthur, honor, What happened there to get that culture so out of whack?
Well, I think that for a period we were so interested in focusing on the technical aspects, the military aspects of the importance of a naval officer. We didn't emphasize the importance of honor and personal character and integrity, and that's something we have restored now, and I feel are restoring and emphasizing a great deal, and has been a major theme of my administration, to focus on those issues of integrity, because I think that's so essential to our success of the naval service.
Have you spoken to the court at Annapolis on
yes, sir,
on this
to the
subject?
Brigade of Midshipmen.
You did?
Indeed, I have. Yes, sir.
Real straight talk?
Absolutely. I'll give you a copy of the.
I would like to. That fascinates me.
Absolutely.
What the Secretary of the Navy might say under those.
I'll be happy to give you a copy of that. I'm it's something that I'll show you the card I pass out wherever I go, which is the timeless traits of leadership. And when I spoke at graduation last year, I talked about those timeless traits of leadership. And on the front of the card is a quote from the superintendent when I was a midshipman, which says, "You can do anything you set your mind to do, and don't you forget it."
And don't you forget it.
And that's something that he beat into our heads when I was there as a midshipman. And then these timeless traits of leadership. A leader is trusted, takes the initiative, uses good judgment, speaks with authority, strengthens others, is optimistic and enthusiastic, never compromises absolutes, and leads by example. And I pass this out to sailors all over the world. And this year wrote every newly commissioned ensign and second lieutenant and sent them this. The reason I refer to it as the timeless traits of leadership, these are actually things that the Apostle Paul showed in the 27th chapter of Acts when his ship was shipwrecked, being taken to Rome to be tried. And so this goes back 2,000 years. It's not something I thought of. This is something that indeed goes back thousands of years and has proven by the test of time.
Are these perilous times for the Navy?
No, our Navy is doing great. I'm very proud of our sailors and Marines in the Navy and Marine Corps. If you look at where our Navy is today operationally, and look what we've accomplished over the last several years in Haiti, in the Arabian Gulf, and stopping Saddam Hussein from heading down to Kuwait again, off Bosnia and the Adriatic, and bringing the forces to the peace table. It was the Navy that did that. Our strike missions off those aircraft carriers and the Tomahawk strikes from the USS Normandy what we did recently in the Taiwan Straits, what we are doing now off the coast of Liberia, and helping ensuring the safety of the Olympics coming up, and then withdrawing our force from Liberia and also from Bosnia. Tremendous job that our people do day in and day out. The good news oftentimes doesn't get reported.
Yes.
But I'm telling you that our sailors and our Marines are out there day in and day out getting the job done for the American people. So I feel very good about where we are operationally. Programmatically, we've had 3 great years on Capitol Hill of having the Congress support our budgets. We've got a new aircraft carrier. We've got the Seawolf submarine and these new attack submarines that are coming along, as well as finishing this Trident program. Our acquisition reform of bringing our new aircraft like the F/A-18 ENF on time, on budget, underweight, the 3 critical criteria for acquisition of a new weapon system. And then our people. Can't say enough about our people. We've got the finest men and women serving in the Navy and the Marine Corps today that we've had in the history of our service. And I know that because I served on active duty myself in the 60s, and we had good people then. They did a great job. But today our people are the finest you'll find in any walk of life. If you ask American people what institution they admire the most, it's the men and women in uniform. And that's because they are so highly professional. They know their mission, they understand their job, they're proud of what they do, and they're just outstanding. And that's the great privilege I have of serving with these great people. And one of the great joys I have in my job is getting out to the fleet and seeing our sailors and Marines and talking with them and encouraging them and letting them hear from me about our priorities for our vision for the future, but giving me the chance to hear from them of what they think about the initiatives and the policies and so forth that emanate from my office.
Now you're going, this sounds like a kind of exotic trip to Russia.
That's right. I'll be leaving next week to go to St. Petersburg for the 300th anniversary of the Russian Navy, and I'm really looking forward to that.
They've become almost, it's so interesting, from the most brutal, bitter enemies, they've almost become stepchildren, haven't they? For example, the Russian Navy, it was very important to them that the Secretary of the United States Navy be present. Isn't that interesting? What a transition.
It is, indeed. And when we were out for the 50th anniversary of VJ Day, we were doing a major exercise with the Russian Navy. Another great part about my job is since I've been here at this time, I've had the opportunity to participate in all the 50th anniversary events of World War II. We were at Normandy for D-Day and Allied invasion of southern France, out in the Philippines for the Battle of Leyte Gulf, on Iwo Jima for the 50th anniversary of Iwo Jima, and to visit with these veterans and to hear their stories and hear their experiences and be able to thank them for what they did for freedom and democracy and liberty around the world has really been a great opportunity for me and something I've really enjoyed.
I must think that as an Annapolis graduate and somebody who's served on one of these nuclear submarines, that must help you tremendously with the troops and the high-ranking officers. In other words, you're one of them.
Well, they know that I understand what it's like to go to sea and to be away from your family and loved ones and spend extended times deployed, and they know when I speak of it that they know I know what I'm talking about because I've experienced it. So I think I was privileged to have had that background and also some prior government experience. I can tell you I feel much more comfortable in this job than I did when I came to Washington in 1977 because I was still green.
I have the strangest intuitive feeling that this is not your last assignment, and somewhere down the road, the folks from LPB who are with me today will be proud to say that they met John Dalton. And Mr. Secretary, on behalf of your fellow citizens back home, I want to thank you. You've been kind and courteous, and we thank you.
Well, thank you, Gus. It's been a great pleasure to be with you. I appreciate it.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This important program series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of a state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for 60 years.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or send $19.95 to Louisiana Legends, care of Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7860 Anselmo Lane, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810. Please allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery.